Friedman.
Hello and welcome back to the second hour of our show. We have a great hour for you. You're not going to want to go away. Comedians Richard Belzer and Tom Parks are going to tickle our funny bone a little later in the hour. But now, the topic I've been waiting for. When Henry Higgins sang, "Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man?" he was wailing a universal theme. Each gender eyes the other with amazement and exasperation. Why can't he be more romantic? Why does she always call her friends whenever we have a problem? Battle lines today focus on the battle of the sexes. And speaking for the men, here he is, guys, Warren Farrell, author of Why Men Are the Way They Are. Mr. Farrell had asked our booking people to set up a debate with me as the adversary. He didn't even know that I was the host of this show. So for the next several moments, I'm going to step out of my role as host, and I'm going to step into my role as the author of Men Are Just Desserts and Smart Cookies Don't Crumble, and a hero is more than just a sandwich. You get the idea? Well, let us begin. Why are men the way they are?
Well, I think men and women are in one way is exactly the same. We get into adolescence and we both try to figure out what's going to get us approval. And the man looks at, and the man and women both have a different type of drug addiction. Men's drug addiction by the time we're in 9th grade is to the image of the attractive woman being bombarded. They're bombarded with that image about 20 million times per year, researchers tell us. So we get into the 9th grade and we look across at the class, and there's a girl in that class who looks like a mini Brooke Shields, what I call the genetic celebrity. Mm-hmm. And we feel before her like a woman would feel walking into a Baskin-Robbins shop and meeting Robert Redford. She would probably take, the ice cream and her keys and put it into her purse.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
It's a famous story.
Yes, and that's sort of the feeling that we have all during our adolescence. We're taking our adolescence and our keys and our ice cream cones. We're putting it into our purse before the attractive girls, and then we notice who they're paying attention to, the attractive girls, and it's not to any 9th grade boys. It's to the 11th grade boys. It's to the boys who are on the football team.
Okay, well, let's stop right there with that phenomenon. I mean, what happens to those of us who aren't beautiful, who are far from being beautiful teenagers, who wore glasses and who were too tall at the wrong ages and weren't developed in the ways that the boys... I mean, we then come to feel that we're nothing. I mean, and then we grow up, even if we become more attractive in the eyes of others when we're older, as always having that image of somehow being unacceptable and rejectable even before we've been asked.
Precisely, and it's even worse than that, because the girl has her own experience of powerlessness, and that is the first experience you just mentioned. Secondly, even if she is the genetic celebrity, she's never sure whether she's asked out for who she is or for what her image is. And the chances are she's asked out for what her image is. So all of her life, she's insecure about the fact that when am I going to lose this genetic celebrity power? Am I really intelligent? Do I really have a nice personality? Am I valued for who I am? The girl who is not the genetic celebrity spends her life making up for the difference between herself and the genetic celebrity, which is why she wears things like makeup, to make up the difference between herself and the genetic celebrity.
But Warren, can you blame us then for wanting to marry up? Can you blame us for wanting the powerful man? After all, many of us had psychological lobotomies when we were kids. Our mother said, don't be too smart, and if you get an 87 and you look over and the boy you like has an 85, you tell him you got an 83. I mean, so right away we have the sense of the two-step shuffle. I mean, we have to have a little bit behind you, which means we stunt your growth if we play that game, because you never get a chance to be the full, wonderful person you really could be.
Exactly.
But you play into that.
Boys and girls both play into, it's a dance. And I never blame either sex, because both sexes are doing the best that they can to try to become, to get the most approval. And what we have done differently in the last 15 years is that women have spoken up and said, listen, this is my experience of powerlessness in the world. This is the way I'm hurting. And what men have done is they haven't spoken up. And so when I was speaking around the country, as I think you know, I was in the board of NOW in New York City, and I was speaking around the country articulating women's issues to men, and I was assuming falsely that the more I understood women's experience of powerlessness, that men had the power that women didn't have.
Well, absolutely women see you as having the power. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yes.
You have the power to ask us or to reject you. We, of course, have the power to say yes or no, but we don't even realize this.
Yes.
We don't even realize our power. But what happens is, we are so frightened of not having a man because you know any woman who doesn't have a man is not really a human being.
Yes.
I mean, you understand that that's the way it is.
Really...
That we will take the lowest common denominator of behavior that you send out because once we get you, we're going to make you change into what you never really were in the first place.
Precisely.
Right?
And that really is destructive both to the woman and to the man, and a sense of an enormously different dynamic between the sexes. But you were asking the original question about why men are the way they are. So what we learn is...
Do you learn false front?
False front, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, macho. You know, I have learned painfully that the more macho a guy presents himself, the more anxious and insecure he is, because people who are really in control don't have to control others, right?
You take the guy on the football team as an example of what you're saying, and what he learns is that if I don't make it to the football team, I am not going to be able to be attractive to the attractive women, that 9th grade girl that I'm attracted to. But he also learns that if I start admitting that I'm hurting, that is, you know, imagine giving women a message that you can get guys' attention by going out into a field and banging your head against 21 other women, and if you get, you know, spinal cord injuries, dislocated shoulders, broken noses, you can cover it up with codeine, you can take amphetamines to make yourself really high for a while, and then if you succeed and you're a hero for a day, a man will pay attention to you. That's sort of the male psychology of that. But if he admits that he's hurting to another male, and he loses his position on the team, he's never experienced a cheerleader saying, you know, I'm going to continue cheering for you. You're a warm, tender, open, lovable, caring person. She cheers for his replaceable part, and the result of that is that the man that you meet, who seems very secure on the outside, the macho front, underneath is a man-child.
Yes.
He's worried about being a replaceable part.
Look, when we talk about power, let's not forget the essential power, economics. And wouldn't it be sensational if more men would like a team partner if we got out of the stereotypical kinds of roles? Because then that allows you not to have to feel, if you ever want to get away, that you're going to have this poor soul who hangs onto your ankle saying, oh, I'm going to get you, you're going to pay, you're going to pay, because you took the best years of my beauty years away, and now look at me, I'm an outcast, no man, no beauty, nothing in front of me, no economics, no marketable skills. Wouldn't it be great? And then a woman could say to a man, listen, here's what I think I'd like in a relationship. You don't quite have it yet, but would you like to?
Yes.
And I'd like to be treated nicely and respectfully, but if you can't, I understand. There'll be somebody else who likes you just the way you are, and we can stop being love nurses and fixing things and telling you you're broken.
And plus the understanding that comes from women and men who are sharing that responsibility is a much greater understanding. Many times, and the man that you're attracted to is a much different type of man. For example, when many women who fall in love with more successful men are not aware that the type of characteristics it takes to become successful at work are inversely related to the characteristics that it takes to become successful at home. So for example, if you and I are at work together and I want to get a promotion and you are my colleague, and you make a presentation, it helps for me to listen for a couple of seconds, pick up the gist of what you're saying, form in my own mind's eye a contribution that I can make, interrupt you, and point out in a subtle way the flaws of your presentation. So my boss takes his focus or her focus and transfers the focus from you over to me, sees me as having critical faculties and you as having critical flaws. If you were my wife, and you go home and you say, gee, I've had a difficult day at work, and I listen to you, pick up the criticisms in what you, the faults in what you did, and don't really pay attention to you, you want to strangle me. The same process that made me an effective person at work has made me ineffective to you at home.
That's interesting. Before we go to our phones, there's just one question. What is the worst thing that men do to women? I'm going to tell you what I think is the worst thing women do to men.
Actually, I think one of the worst things that men do to women is not listen. Not really draw them out and solve problems before, rather than asking them to be their own person. Feeling so insecure that they pay for women rather than asking women to pay for themselves.
You know what I think is the worst thing that women do to men? They are married to the marriage and not to the man. They have lost sight of the man just so that they can keep the marriage intact. We're going to let our viewers get involved. Okay, I'm going to switch back to host for just a minute. Would you like to join us? I hope so. Give us a call. We'll let you give your opinions as part of this discussion at 213-460-5080.
You are...
Tell folks my award-winning barbecue sauce is really Kraft, thick and spicy?
Jimmy Joe!
The press.
What's the secret behind your famous barbecue sauce?
You mean how it's so thick it stands up to my drumstick test?
Great shot.
Uh-huh. And spices you can see.
Got him.
And taste.
Ooh-wee!
My secret?
Yeah?
Talent. Pure talent.
Kraft thick and spicy barbecue sauce. The secret to great barbecue.
Hi, I'm Jim Martindale, and I'd like to introduce you to the Garden Weasel. It's a revolutionary 5-in-1 tool that makes gardening fun and easy. The Garden Weasel's 3 rotary blades mesh with a scissor action to break up topsoil. They uproot young weeds before they get a start. That mixes the weeds and leaves into the soil, and that's a mulch, and that's beneficial to your garden. The Weasel cultivates to a uniform 2-inch depth, protecting your plant's roots. Remove the center blade for cultivating around seedling rows and young bedding plants and vegetables. Use 1 blade for those hard-to-reach areas. Insert the short handle, and the Weasel is perfect for plant boxes and greenhouses. The Garden Weasel is made of a rust-free alloy that's virtually self-cleaning. Simply hose it off and allow it to dry. If you have a friend that's into gardening like I am, the Garden Weasel makes a perfect gift. Look for this display.
The Garden Weasel is now available at participating Ace, True Value, Service Star, Coast to Coast, Hardware Hank, and our own stores. Makes a great gift.
Troubled by bad breath? Then have a Milk-Bone dog biscuit to help scrape away plaque and food particles to give you cleaner teeth, fresher breath. Get Milk-Bone because, naturally, every dog wants fresher breath.
The Braun cordless curler never needs electricity and heats up in only 90 seconds. For beautiful hair anytime, anywhere. The best-selling curlers in Europe are now here. Braun cordless curlers.
We're talking about the differences between men and women. We're talking with Warren Farrell, who's the author of Why Men Are the Way They Are. I'm going to go straight to the phones, all right? Okay. We've got Rita from Freeport, Louisiana. Hi, Rita.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Your comments?
My comments are, why do men have a tendency to be also in the atmosphere of putting on a farce to a woman in reference to their inability to the woman?
In reference to their inability or in reference to their abilities?
Their emotional.
Abilities. Okay, usually when men put on a front, it's usually saying basically at the beginning of the relationship, I am successful, I am able to handle things, and underneath they're sort of fearing like, well, I really can handle things as well as I'm making myself out to be able to handle things, and the reason they do that is that they feel overall that women will accept them more if they have more potential. So for example, if the man's in medical school and he sits across from you and says, you know, medical school is really tough, I think what I'd like to do is drop out and become a nurse or a pharmacist, he feels that you will distance more from him than if he says, you know, I'm on the way to becoming a surgeon, and the head of the department said I'll probably be one of the top surgeons in the country. He feels that you will draw in closer to him, you'll feel more secure. So he puts on a front because the front, he learns, gives him less rejection. And he, like you, his front of saying those things is somewhat like a woman wearing perfume or the dress that has always worked for her, or the dress that makes her hips look narrower or different or her breasts look larger. And she's learned that by doing that, she'll get less rejection.
But are men really proving themselves to women, or are they proving themselves to other men?
Oh, it's all related. As you know, I mean, if you get approval, and some man says to you, you look beautiful, you look wonderful, the way you find out, each person tests the tools of the trade with their own sex. In other words, men know the
So a 45-year-old man with an 18-year-old girl knows that his friends are going to say, oh, look at that. I mean, Warren's got to be one heck of a man. Look what he could pull in.
Now, that's the outcome. There was the 18-year-old girl, but the tools of the trade are the man sort of saying, okay, I've got to know my stock market. I've got to know my business. Like the woman says, I have to know which dress is most appealing, which makeup is, where the hair mousse leaves off, where the hair fix, you know, where the eye fix, where the eyeshadow, where the mascara,
we sound awful.
You know, all those things.
Steve from Seattle, you're on the air. Welcome.
Yes. I had a question, I guess a twofold question. Do you think women will more eventually become as, I don't know, dogmatic towards the business world? And on the other end of the stick, eventually, and on the other end of the coin, I guess you could ask, do you think men will become as caring and as sensitive?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
What a great question.
On the first level, women have a long way to go before they become as dogmatic or the same way in the business world as men, because the messages to women are still a lot of mixed messages. And as a result of the woman who becomes a surgeon at the top of or IBM executive is still going to be asked, are you married? Do you have children? What's your relationship with your husband like? And so on.
Yeah,
so
what does your husband think about you doing this?
Doing that type of thing. If the relationship breaks up, she'll be asked much more than the man will. You know, what's the matter? Do you think you should have, withdrawn from your work? Now, the negative side of that is the woman doesn't have the incentive to achieve as much. The positive side of that is she doesn't have the incentive to be as dogmatic, authoritarian, to make it through the rat race where it's hurting. So, for example, a woman I'm going out with is a medical doctor, but she left her work she left her medical doctor work after the first year doing her internship because she found that the internship program was putting her through 100 to 120 hours of work per week. She was driving herself crazy. She was saying, I am not a human being anymore. Now, partially as a result of being a female, she could say, being a human being is important enough to me. In relation to being a medical doctor is not so important to me. I can look at life in a balanced way. The medical doctor who's a male who feels that he's married to a woman who will be very disappointed and feel that his mother will never say, gee, I'm proud of my son, the nurse, but I'm, not, and he really got in touch with himself, so therefore, he's really a much more centered person than he was when he was becoming a doctor, and the father would withdraw from him. He feels that his whole life is knocked out if he withdraws from, say, becoming the doctor or the engineer, and if he, quote, fails.
Yeah, but Steve, let me just relay something. Sure. Steve, I think I disagree with Warren just a little bit. One of the things I'm seeing in my practice is that women who've always wanted men to be sensitive don't know how to handle them when they are becoming sensitive. And one very famous psychologist that many of us know has gone on record on the air talking about men as wimps, a term that would never be a part of my vocabulary, and has really turned women around thinking, oh, there really is something wrong with a man who's vulnerable. Being vulnerable is telling people things about you that you don't like, not showing off.
Oh, absolutely.
And trying to hook them, seduce them in some ways emotionally. And frankly, I see a lot of women in business who have taken on male traits that I think are not to anyone's good. They are the kind of traits that feed aggression, hostility, and the most negative kinds of competitiveness. So now have we confused you, Steve?
No, what you're saying is absolutely true. First, about the females, oftentimes the dress for success was oftentimes becoming an imitation male.
Oh, yeah.
And yet what I was also trying to point out to Steve is that's happened despite still women having less pressure. The career woman is called a career woman if she supports herself. The man who just supports himself is called a playboy. He's not, we don't say, gee, it's wonderful that you have a career.
Oh, yeah, but when we take care of our kids, that's our job. When he does it, he's babysitting for us. They're his children, too. Let's.
And then on the sensitive male, we all want sensitive men if they're Alan Alda's, if they're successful first and sensitive after, or Phil Donahue's, if they're successful first and then sensitive in addition to being successful.
Yeah, but if they whine a lot, we don't want them.
But if they express their feelings, we often call it whining. If they say, gee, I'm finally in touch with what's hurting me,
I don't
or we can call them a wimp or sensitive, and we might respond by saying, gee, I don't want to mother you. But the underlying dynamic here, Sonja, is when the woman hears from her man that the sensitivity is reaching a point that he can no longer be successful, that's when she gets scared.
Yes, I think that's true. That's a wonderful point. I think it's true. Thanks, Steve. Joyce from Michigan is with us now. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Sonja. I agree with everything you said. And I would like to ask Warren, how do you get your husband to listen to you?
Good.
Not many. He goes in one ear, not the other. He falls asleep. Or...
Yes.
Falling asleep is a technique. That's a psychological defense. Okay, how do you get him to listen?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. First of all, the woman really needs to communicate to the man that it's absolutely essential that he listen. Secondly, men are very bottom line oriented. The man needs to know that you are willing and able to financially leave the relationship if he doesn't hear.
Did you all hear that? Oh, there we go. The chimes just went off. That was you won the lottery. That was the most important thing, I think, that you said. She's got to feel that she can leave. If she can't leave, she can't even put herself into it.
If men should be just desserts. We should not be main meals. You know, we should not be meal tickets. And
it's the most delicious, wonderful part of the feast of life, but you have to be willing to give it up if it's destroying you. Don't you think?
Willing to give it up, and when I say willing to give it up, I mean financially able to give it up, psychologically willing to give it up, and be able to, and with if the man is basically getting the message, I should listen, but and that would be nice, but if I don't succeed, and I don't bring in enough income for me, for her, for our family, for their future and aspirations, and that exhausts me, that process, I'm going to put my priority into not being exhausted. In addition, he's also learned after providing for the whole family, he usually has turned himself into a machine, just like my woman friend found that she was threatened to be turned into a machine.
I have to ask you something, though, coming off of that question. What about the issue of commitment? A friend of mine went to a wedding Saturday night that didn't occur. The groom got cold feet. What is this thing with men fearing commitment? They, you know, they just don't want to give up all the other women in the world?
Well, that's part of it. First of all, we inundate men with this image of beautiful women and access to them, and if the man begins to become more successful, for the first time in his life, what he's been deprived of all his life is beginning to be available to him. So he's acting out of a deprivation if he's beginning to be successful. When women say, why are men afraid of commitment, they don't mean why are men who are not successful afraid of commitment. They mean why are men who are successful for me enough to me to be attracted to afraid of commitment. Those men are the ones that have at the beginning of their fantasy. Secondly, when women and men say, I want to commit or I love you, what the woman frequently will mean, if she's committing to a fairly successful man, is that she would like three options. One is the option to work full-time at her career if she would like to. Second is the option to work full-time at home if she would like to. Third is the option to do any combination of those three things.
Yes.
The man implicitly learns that he gets three different options. Option one is the option to work full-time. Option two is the option to work full-time.
You made your point. Listen, this is wonderful. I hope we get a chance to do it again, because I haven't even begun to ask you how you feel about women pursuing men and lots more. But before we leave, I'd like to end on one note, and that is that I think people must live their lives with the recognition that anyone else in their life can change their mind. Therefore, their decisions have to be their own. Would you like to give one sentence of a last thought?
If you're asking a man to read a self-improvement book, read 2 passages from the self-improvement book to him first that he already would agree with or that he has lectured to you about, and then leave the book around and he will pick up the self-improvement book.
Great advice. Thanks for being with us. I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Round 2 next time.
It's wonderful.
Flip Spiceland takes a look at the nation's weather. Right now, we're going to take a look at what's cooking with Bert Wolf and